What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with my boy Marshall Allen. He is a junior mechanical engineering major from Sugar Land, Texas, and he is here to talk all about God and how he's been working through him, just his passions and experiences in college. I'm going to get to hear a couple of good words from him, and it's going to be awesome. Without further ado, I will pray this episode in, and we will get started. Dear Father, we thank you so much for this day, this amazing morning, for this really chilly weather. Hopefully it gets warmer in a little bit, but we thank you for it anyways, God. You're a good God, and we hope this conversation is just glorifying to you, that our words would be filled with your spirit, and that we could talk to each other in love, and we could build each other up, and we could build up people outside of this room who are listening, who might listen to this in the future, God. I pray that everything we would do, we would just have you in the front of our minds, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Bro, how's it been?
It's been good.
It's been good. How was your week? Yeah?
Busy.
Busy?
Yeah, playing catch up from career fair week. So yeah.
Okay. Lots of Python or no?
No, we're past that.
Past it now?
Yeah.
What's it
for the time
right
being.
now? What's all the class load look like?
It's just lots of math.
Yeah.
Like not no coding right now.
Oof.
It's just all on paper. Lots of trees are being killed.
Oh.
Lots of paper is being used.
They don't have like the web assigned anymore, or are they just like?
They do, but surprisingly, most of my classes take physical homework semester for some this semester for some
Yeah,
reason.
they want to like hand grade everything. I guess like see your work or something.
I guess, even though usually, like, I've never really had this much paper homework since like freshman year, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like
It's pretty.
I have some like paper homework like in Greek, because he'll like
Yeah.
Xerox like the original translation, and then we like take it home and we mark it up, and we don't have to bring it back, but it's like what we use to like translate it. But everything else, it's like, here's like 20 PDFs for the semester, just download them and see what happens.
Yeah.
Gone are the course packs where you have to drop like $30 in Barnes and Noble. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I have my PDF scanner app on my phone, and I
Oh,
haven't
nice.
used it yet this semester. So everything's been physical.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about mechanical engineering, because it is your major, something I would assume that you're pretty passionate about, even though I don't know a lick about it. I was wondering if you could kind of talk through how Christ has moved you into that major, into that vocation, but also like how he's working in you through that to kind of, I don't know, produce some fruit.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was a mechanical engineer.
Nice.
And so in high school, I did pretty good at math.
Yeah.
You're a high school kid going into college trying to figure out what to do. It's like,
What am I good at?
what am I good at? And then unless you have like some connection to like a career somehow, then usually it's just kind of like, what classes am I good at?
Right.
What kind of goals do I want to set for myself? So I was like, hey, math and physics.
Yeah.
It's my wheelhouse there. And then what kind of goals? I could see my dad, like his career and like all the cool stuff he's been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So really just like seeing that and knowing that with mechanical engineering being such a broad major, there's a lot of stuff you
Yeah.
can do. You just have like an amazing basis to do it all off of.
Right.
So that's why I moved into that as far as reasoning goes.
Nice.
And then, yeah, it's a really tough major. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of time. It's definitely a commitment. Joking with my buddy that I'm trying to get to come to Bible study the other day. Because he missed Bible study last week and was telling me he felt bad about it. I said, no worries, man. We're mechanical engineers. Missing out on like social opportunities is practically a hobby of ours.
That's a hobby. It's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, but it's definitely a commitment in that regard.
Yeah. Well, how do you find that balance then? I mean, because you're pretty involved. You're here at the chapel. You've got other organizations that you're with. How do you kind of, maintain that balance, not only with like your classwork, like your own personal life, but also just like your relationship with like the Lord?
Yeah. Well, I think I made a good choice freshman year, which was really foundational. Was just kind of limit involvement, like to like a church and like stuff that I wasn't committed to as far as like mandatory like groups and like leadership teams or like different organizations, stuff like that. I really just kind of played like a backseat role.
Right.
And anything that I joined, and I just focused on the studies, especially because freshman year, here at A&M, you have to have a
Right.
certain GPA after freshman year to automatically get into what you want. And mechanical is a pretty competitive major,
Yeah.
so the focus was on my GPA that year.
How does that? I know because y'all have to do like your actual applications because you're general
Yeah,
engineering when you
start
come
as-
in.
Yeah, you start as general engineering, and then it's changed now. But when I did it after your second semester freshman year, going in as you're approaching your sophomore year, you write essays about your intent as far as different majors go. You rank them
Okay.
like 1 through 4. You give them a list of 4, and you can double up too if you really want one. But
So like
then you-
1 and 2 would be mechanical.
yeah, but then you're playing a dangerous game because if you really don't get that, then you lost an option, and if it goes
Right.
off your list, then you're going to be putting something random
Got you.
potentially.
So what's the advantage? Like how? Because if they don't give it to you for 1, why would they give it to you for 2?
Next round of consideration,
Oh, okay.
maybe. They've
So they're like drafting you in a way, or?
they look at all the people that have mechanical engineering as their first choice.
Okay.
Maybe you get rejected, and then they go back through, and then you still have it on there. So check
Okay,
it
so like somebody who like had it as their first choice but doesn't have like as good a GPA would lose it out to somebody
Like
who had it as
maybe-
like their second choice but with a better GPA.
Or maybe you don't have as good of a GPA, but you have it on there twice, and you have a really good like essay of intent.
Right.
And so they can tell that
You're serious
really
about it.
passionate about this major if you got in, even if your like academics weren't super great to like
Right.
back it up. Then they might like allow a little more leeway for somebody like that. Then maybe somebody has a little better GPA, but doesn't
Yeah.
seem really, really interested.
Well, it's interesting to me because like especially within like the really competitive majors I see like, BIMs and then like engineering and stuff like that, you're all fighting for the GPA within like give or take the same classes type of thing. So it's like who's got like the highest grade in this section or this class. And it's strange just like how small the margins are, because like you could have like a 3.8 and just like, have gotten lucky on like 1 or 2 classes, 1 or 2 sections,
really
like squeeze out that A.
professors.
Yeah, with your professors
Professor
too.
basis is huge.
Or you could like have that 3.4, just had like a bad prof or a bad test with a good prof, and it's like that one thing. So like, I don't know. There's not as much of that, I feel like, at least like in the liberal arts, because we're like just kind of chilling out. But it's like every time I just like see the faces of like these engineers who are like struggling through
Yeah.
and just trying to like make it, I'm like, y'all,
It's
I'll be praying for you.
it's a narrow road, I guess you could say. Like,
Not the road less traveled here, at least, but
No, but
yeah, it's the road
yeah.
most traveled here, which is
Just-
why it's so competitive.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like coursework, I mean, it all really stacks on each other too.
Yeah.
I don't know like how much like you have classes that stack on each other.
What do you mean by stack?
Like, you have like all your prerequisites.
Okay, so like
Do you have a lot of
you have like
prerequisites, or do you just kind of progress as far as like
it depends on like what you want to have your concentration in.
Yeah.
Especially with like English, so there's like a creative writing concentration where you have your 235, which is like basic elements of creative writing, and then it's like workshops for prose or poetry or like screenwriting and that type of thing, or like within specific genres. So it's like you have like prerequisite for a certain concentration, and most
Yeah.
people just kind of like try like at least like one creative writing class or stuff. So you have the options open, but it's not so much like, okay, you have creative writing 1, then creative writing 2
Yeah.
and 3, the way you do with like OChem or Cal
got
3 and
three
yeah.
calculuses, yeah.
Gosh, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, so that's another thing too, is that everything is connected with a web of prerequisites in engineering.
That's right.
So
yeah.
so if you struggle, you struggle in a couple classes, and then you get to the next semester and you have a class that's based off those two, and then
Gotcha.
you like either have to kind of catch up, or just kind of power through,
Yeah.
or it'll hit you hard. And
I think that was my biggest struggle with like math and physics, especially, was like pre-calculus. I sort of understood like by the end of the year, my junior year in high school, but then like I have that 3-month break. I'm not thinking about math at all, and then I jump into Calc BC, and it's like, okay, I remember all that stuff from pre-cal, and I was like, no,
Yeah.
not. So it's just like it's what you. I don't know. Do you have to like practice it all like over the break? Or are you just retaining it?
You really
quizzing
have
yourself?
to get back into it with like, which some people don't do, but generally they do a good job of having a beginning of the class. After syllabus week, your first
Like your
week
review.
or two is like your prerequisite review almost.
Okay. That's helpful.
And so as long as you like get on board with that after and like get into things after syllabus week,
Right.
then usually they'll cover it well enough that you'll be fine. But
Yeah.
you have to kind of like watch out, because if you kind of cruise after syllabus week into that a little bit, then it'll definitely hit you hard later whenever
Got you.
they start building on that stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I remember even with my first math class, because I only had to take 2, was like 166, and that was like contemplation and like just basic topics in math, something to like get the credit, or like it was a lot of stats and like matrices. And I was like, okay, I like kind of understand this and like could work through it. Then I had business cal, which I took, which evidently I didn't have to take, and I didn't know that until like after I took it. Yeah, so I took business cal, and they did like the pre-screening. It's like, where do you stand? Like, what do you know already?
Yeah.
And your boy just like bombed that so
Yeah.
freaking hard, because it had been like a year and a half since because I took it
Yeah.
last like the fall of my sophomore year, so it had been like a good solid year and a half since I'd looked at a math thing, and I was like, oh gosh, it was rough.
Ouch.
I know. And then no, it was weird because like I got through the class and did like pretty well, and like at the end of the class I really only needed like a C or something on the final to make the grade that I wanted to make, and I was like super confident about it, like okay, I can at least like pass this final exam.
Yeah.
And then I get to the meeting place on the day of the exam, and I see my roommate come out of the classroom who was in the same section that I was, and he's like, what did you think about the test? And I was like, what do you mean, what did I think about the test? And he's like, the final that we just took. And I was like, oh frick. So I'd like race down the stairs to the bottom of like Heldon Fells, and was just like not begging on my knees, but like kind of telling the professor like, hey, I just made a big freaking mistake, and I put the time in wrong on my calendar. I put the like end time as the start time, and this, that, and the other thing. She was like, it's fine, we'll have another section here in like a couple hours, you can come back and take it then. And I was like, God bless you. Like,
Yeah, that's great.
otherwise, ugh, I would have had
Yeah.
another semester of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like every college student's like nightmare.
Exactly.
Basically.
Just missing the final. Do you have any close calls?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like countless close calls. I mean, I had one class where I was like 0.02 of a point above a classmate, Nehemiah, here at the chapel. Yeah. And I got rounded up and he didn't.
Oop.
Stuff like that, where it's like
It's probably like one question on a homework or
Yeah,
something
I know,
ridiculous
it's
like
crazy.
that. Yeah.
you feel horrible, but you're like at the same time you're like, wow, I made it.
Yeah.
And then there's another class where I had to make a perfect score on the final to get what I needed,
Yeah.
an A. So, I had argued a lot of a lot of exam grades in that class. And I
Nice.
think he had started to get annoyed with me. So,
So he was just like, okay.
whenever I turned the final, and I think I was probably like a point or two off from what I
Right.
judged on, like what I knew absolutely and what I knew I'd guessed on, and
Yeah.
the statistics weren't in my favor. And I remember going up and making sure I turned it into him and not the TA, just so that he would, physically
Got
see me
you.
hand him the paper. And then I asked him, because I'd been in his office hours,
Yeah.
do you think I got what I needed? So that he would remember,
Just like
so
a
he
little-
would remember
a
me whenever
little-
when he was grading it. And then I saw that grade pop up in eCampus, and I made it sure enough. So
Bro, you got it done.
terrifying stuff.
I don't know whether that's like intentional or like threatening.
Just like,
A healthy mix of both.
well, if I had gotten a 98 or 99, I obviously would have been back there to argue. And
Gotcha.
so I was really just trying to communicate more than anything. Like, if it's close, like, I'm going to be there to argue. And
That's persistency.
And hope that he just, avoids it altogether by just, like, looking
Yeah.
over my exam a couple of times to see if there's anywhere I can get partial credit.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he was a nice guy after all, and
Yeah.
came through.
My strat is usually just like sit in the front and look like I know what I'm doing, or like pay attention, and then like eventually they'll like learn my name, as I'm
Yeah.
turning it in, and then they'll be like, okay, Like,
Yeah.
you know, because I've had a couple close calls before. It was actually my intro to kines class when, like, I was a kines major before I switched to English. The final exam was like online, and it was one of the things where you got like instant feedback, which was cool, but also like a little like, like I'm not sure I want to know right now. You know, I just
Yeah.
took it. And I needed like probably, I don't know what it was probably like 900 out of 1,000 total points for the course, you know? And I probably needed like an 85 on the exam, you know? And I got an 86. So I was like 901 out of 100. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. Like, had I missed like 2 questions,
Yeah.
yikes. No. But then I ended up switching, so it wasn't a big deal anyway. I was out of major at that point.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Proud
It
of
is
you,
how it
though.
is. What's up?
Proud of you, though.
Thanks, bud.
boy.
I know. I was just like, I looked at it, and then like, I was actually in shock about how close it was, because I thought I'd done like a
Yeah.
little better. Like, I thought I'd like cleared the margin. Like, I felt pretty good about it, but there was like those 2 or 3 questions that like either I just like misread, because it shows you also like, these are your green ones and here's your red ones. I saw a
Yeah.
couple of them. I was like, oh shoot, this is cutting it really, really close. And then I looked at the bottom. It was like 901 out of 1,000. I was like, huh.
And yeah, freshman year I had a second semester. I had Cal 2 and let's see, Chem 107.
Right.
So engineering intro to chem for people that aren't doing chemistry.
Nice.
And then Cal 2 were really giving me a little bit of trouble that semester. I just
Yeah.
had a bad exam, I think, in Cal 2. And in the semester, you know, you have finals multiple finals on the same days, and you're trying to figure out, you know, where do I put my effort?
Yeah.
You know, which classes can I take a little bit more of it in?
Right.
almost?
You're balancing everything.
Yeah, because there's only so much you can do, and ended up, you know, shifting away from Cal 2 because I had really come through on like the 3rd exam, got like a high grade, brought my exam scored back up, but Chem was just close the whole time.
Right.
And so I was like, I gotta lock Chem down, and I can shift off of Cal a little bit. And I think I needed like a 76 on Cal
Oof.
to
Yeah.
get an A, and I ended up getting like a 78. And
Nice.
after the exam, I was like, oh no, like, you know,
Like you felt like it was close?
yeah,
Or you
I
felt like you could have
was
missed it?
close after, like, Chem was good because I just like was all in on Chem, and then Cal 2, I got out of Cal 2, and I was like, man, maybe I didn't study enough. Maybe I should have like
Right.
redistributed, but it worked out, you know.
Yeah. I try not to have like regrets at least, you know, because it's
Yeah.
just like I know like input equals output, and so like I try not to like look back and be like, okay, if I had done this and I did this, I'm like, no, like you did what you did, you got what you got, and now you just like keep moving forward, you know, because
Yeah.
it's like that's how you start thinking like, oh, woe was me, like I could have. If I just had like this one extra point on the exam or studied this one extra hour, you know, it's like, don't do that to yourself. Ain't nobody
Yeah.
need that in their life.
Yeah, that's a great approach. Like, especially now that like our exams in engineering have such like a broad
Right.
subject matter that they can have. I just try to make it a habit of what is it reasonable that I study? Because there's
Yeah.
like endless things that I can go over. What would
Gotcha.
it be reasonable for the professor to ask me, and what would it be reasonable for me to know at this point in the semester as a student? like,
Yeah.
going through the material. Because I mean, each chapter, you know, you'll have end of chapter questions to
Right.
study, and they'll go like 1 through 150 or whatever.
Yeah.
And like once you've gotten past like 120, it's all just like super crazy. Like,
Right.
it's not even like you have to know the material. It's just like you have to like apply it
Yeah.
a bunch of times in a row. Like, instead of like your simple spring and mass system, you'll have like
Oof.
8 interconnected, and it'll be the same thing like over and over and over again.
No, I remember those
So-
diagrams. Those were like the death of me in physics C. I was just like, nope, dropping it.
Yeah, so it's just kind of trying to figure out, you know, if I study this, like, will I be happy at the end of the day? Like, coming out of the exam, all right, like I knew what I thought was reasonable for me to
Right.
know, and like beyond that, like they had some stuff that, you know, was
Yeah.
maybe questionable as far as stuff that we'd learned, but as long as you kind of go into it knowing that you've done your part for all that you know, then that's really all you
Yeah.
can do.
What part do you think does, I guess, just like your faith play in that in terms of just like your approach to testing, because that's really big, but also just like studying as well, because it's like you want to do everything for like the glory of God and stuff like that, but it's also like kind of hard because in a way, like especially in engineering, like I don't feel this stress necessarily, but it feels like you're legit serving like 5 different masters if you're in 15 hours, you know, and you like don't know if you want to give 100% to this class or this class. It's like, how do you kind of work through that in your head?
You just kind of have to get into a routine and kind of establish when you're going to work on what.
Yeah.
At least personally, that's how I do it. You know, this is my day for this class.
Right.
And you have to kind of know how to shift it as like projects come up for different classes and stuff like that. Like, what can I concede time on? What can I
Micromanaging stuff?
Yeah,
or?
you really got to micromanage your time. And even now, you know, organizations,
Yeah.
like the ones that I'm in the back seat of, you know, when that project comes around, I'm not in those meetings because I've got to kind of redistribute that time. But yeah, I mean,
stressful?
definitely,
Yeah.
and I feel like having that like freedom in those like things that you aren't fully committed to kind of like redistribute your time is like super valuable as
Yeah.
far as like you have to have like that degree of freedom that you can use
Yeah.
to your advantage. And then as far as faith plays into it, I mean, there's that verse. I don't know the exact reference, but
It's
you know,
alright.
like worrying doesn't add any time. Like who is worried and like it doesn't
Let
add
tomorrow
any,
worry for
yeah,
itself.
let tomorrow worry for itself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you know, if you have that mindset, you described it great. Like if I put in the inputs that I expect like
Yeah.
a good output for, or like that sort of thing.
And whether or not like it matches up, because sometimes I make the mistake of like proactively thinking, okay, like if I do this, this, and this, then my grade's gonna be this, you know.
Yeah.
Or like I study for like 2 hours, I'm gonna get that A. Or like, you know, 2 hours get that B, an extra hour is gonna get me that A. But it's like not always guaranteed, you know. So sometimes like I make the mistake of thinking that my works are gonna get me to that point that I want.
Yeah.
And instead of just like God's grace legit carrying me, and the grace of teachers, profs, definitely like
Yeah, that's
also
definitely-
yeah.
Yeah, like we talked about, that's definitely a big contributing factor. That
Prof makes your grade, bro.
that little roundup. Yeah. But yeah, as far as you really just have to put in the inputs, and I mean to some degree, sometimes you know the inputs you thought
Yeah.
weren't the inputs that you could have, you know.
Right.
That's one thing too, is you have to like not get complacent in your work,
Okay.
and kind of the comparison game too. You have to be careful as far as like oh, well, I did like more work than like
Yeah. Than this person,
these
but they got a
people that
better grade.
These
and-
people that I see around me are this, so I should do fine.
Right.
It's like, no, like how much work are you happy with?
Yeah.
How much work do you feel like what you're putting forth is like your best effort within reason? And you have to like throw in that within reason qualifier, because if
Yeah.
you're like a perfectionist engineer like me, you could be up all night working on that project,
Right.
and at the end of the day, like it was what the professor wanted it at midnight and not at 4 a.m. Whenever you kept working on it. So you kind of have to
Yeah.
keep that in mind as well. Like, what is it that I should put forward within reason, but also
Yeah.
within my like best effort.
For sure. Reasonable, but also I think healthy is a good word to describe it also. Where it's just
yeah,
like
healthy as far as it goes to sleep.
yeah, because that's the main thing that like you're really taking a toll on is yourself. Because like I mean, while you have like organizations, you might be in the back seat and you kind of like, you know, float in and out. Like you still
Yeah.
have like that community that you can reach out to and you know that you can cling to, especially in the church, like when things are getting rough. But it's like if you start staying up till 3, 4,
Yeah.
5 in the morning, you know, repeatedly throughout the week or weeks, you know, you kind of forget as it becomes routine just how like little you're paying attention to your body, like
Yeah.
not eating as much. Like I
Oh,
know
yeah.
even me, it's like it gets crazy sometimes.
Yeah, second semester sophomore year, which apparently they're changing in mechanical engineering now because I guess they became aware of how taxing it
Right.
really was. Yeah, it was probably about a 5-hour sleep night, you know, every day of the week, and then weekends before I had men's Bible study. That
Yeah.
noon time was open, and I would just sleep until like 4.
Oh gosh.
It was bad. So But yeah, definitely adjusted out of that coming into junior year. Was not about to do that.
How'd you make that adjustment? Just like reel back?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of carried into the summer just because you put an engineer that's like been like worked to death over a semester, and like
You give him a break.
a space of free time, and the sleep schedule doesn't really change. The only thing that changes is what you're doing.
Right.
And
What were you doing?
I was getting good at PUBG.
PUBG?
Yeah. But that's the other thing too, is you have to be careful because engineering is kind of an odd, technically obsessive major. So
Yeah.
whenever you get out of that, you can kind of obsess over other stuff too. So
Yeah. Do you have a particularly obsessive personality? Or,
yeah, I would say so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I get going on something and I really like it, then it's tough to pry me out of it.
Yeah.
You can ask my mom. She's yelled at me many a time growing up, trying to get me off the computer or out of the backyard.
Yeah.
And I mean, that can be a good thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Like this summer, I was able to learn the mandolin so quickly
Nice.
because I picked it up and I liked it.
Yeah.
And
You did that over just over this past summer?
yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
I thought you've been playing for like years.
No.
No.
Yeah, I've just been playing since June. Connor, one of the guys I'm trying to get
Okay,
to,
right.
so he came to the chapel
Yeah.
1 or 2 weeks ago.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he let me borrow his, and I liked it. I found an avenue that I could learn it.
Dang.
Relatively reasonably through the internet,
Yeah.
and due to that kind of obsessive nature, I was able to
Yeah.
keep on.
Exactly.
So it's that way. It's like a tool for good, but also
For sure.
it can be a tool for evil. So you have to be like really
Right. And I think
careful
that,
about-
I think that obsessive personality, like, because I definitely have it too. Like, it's not always like vocal. Some people are like really just like silently obsessive. They just like can be introverted, digging into the homework, not really like super passionately talking about what they love and are obsessed with. But like, it's kind of, I think, just part of our nature to obsess or worship over something is another way I would put it. And so like whether or not engineering is becoming your god or whether or not
Yeah.
PUBG is something that you like idolize, I don't think that's the case for most people, but like, it's like what you're spending your time on, your actions, and what you're focusing on is like just about always an act of worship in some way or another, and it's whether or not we can kind of like still pursue these other passions apart from Christ. And still have the kind of sense to return to God and be like, oh yeah, you're still the center of my life, And I do a pretty bad job of that most of the time, but
Yeah.
it's the goal, it's the ideal.
Yeah, I would say the same. Yeah, it's tough, but I've really liked being able to move into roles like men's Bible study,
Yeah.
and getting involved here at the chapel, because those two things, those are good communities,
Right.
And I like those communities, and
Yeah.
that obsessive nature. I want to if I see
Right.
something pop up in that group me like an event or something.
Oh, exactly, bro.
You want to be a part of it. So
That's the best
those-
thing.
Yeah, those are really good.
Yeah.
I think. And that was kind of my goal setting out to start men's Bible study too, is like good like male communities are hard to come by.
Yeah.
But we have a good group of guys here at the chapel.
We do. It's
I
strangely
definitely
good.
Wanted to get something going with that.
Yeah. And it was weird because my freshman year, I think because you came in both of our sophomore year, right?
Yeah.
My freshman year, it was almost kind of the reverse. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. We had a couple of upperclassmen who were guys who were like kind of loosely connected. But I was really like one of two guys that came to freshman Bible study every week, So there just
Yeah.
was, there was me and Rob. But they're just, and I guess Michael also. We were all a little bit intermittent, but like us two or three, But it wasn't the squad that we have now because we probably have like at least half a dozen, seven or eight guys at freshman Bible study.
I'm trying to bring in more at
Bro,
men's Bible study.
That's good bull.
Yeah.
And it's really good to see. And I like how you mentioned, and I would love if you could talk a little bit more about how like specifically male community is getting harder to come by. What do you mean by that? What do you think is a good picture of like male community, brotherhood, and stuff like that? How is Christ involved in there? What's the mission and stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think as far as Christ involved in that, like we see him and his disciples.
Yeah.
We see leadership and we see like community of believers
For sure.
like supporting each other and pursuing the common goal of Christ.
Yeah.
And so, as a leader wise, you should like kind of look for somebody like Christ that steers you in the right
Yeah.
direction, is like founded in the Word.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as people goes, really, like Christ needed, all you need is commitment, really. Like,
Yeah.
you can work with commitment. Like, if people show up to Bible study,
Right.
it doesn't matter, like,
That's a good word.
who they are. Like, as long as they show up, that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, he displays that image pretty prominently in Scripture for us.
Yeah.
But as far as it being hard to come by, I mean, I think you see, I mean, video games.
Right.
Video games are made to make the male mind obsessive. Because that's their market,
Right.
Stuff like that really is easy to pull people away from community and like hanging out with other real people.
That's interesting.
In
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Because I've always, I don't know, I'm taking a class right now where we're kind of like talking about like online community versus like quote unquote like real
Yeah.
community and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And it's interesting how there certainly is something that you get with like the physical presence of somebody, and just like the feedback,
You get all
the
the
body
cues.
language, all the cues and the body language. You become like socialized as like we traditionally think about it. But I mean, in my personal experience, I mean, like even GroupMe is like a really good example. It's like there's community online that's really not really a substitute for, but like a supplement to,
A supplement, yeah. Was a good
that
word.
physical community.
Yeah.
And that's big. And I like how you talked about video games too, because it's like I know a bunch of guys, my brother included, who back in San Antonio, like they all are like video game buddies, but they'll be like in separate rooms or like separate dorms or separate houses. They can like communicate with each other. They'll be talking like on the mics and stuff, but it's like they don't go hang out. They just hang out online.
It would be a good supplement, if used
Yeah.
correctly, but it has that danger of, being
isolating
that-
you physically.
Yeah, being that, and I mean even beyond physically, just like as far as like mentally goes, like your relationship with those people changes when it just revolves around
Right.
that game instead of like there's a big difference in commitment between like I'll get on Fortnite with you and like if you want to go get something to eat, I will like get out of my
Get
house
up and
drive,
move,
like,
yeah.
like yeah,
In physical space.
Getting people to get up and go somewhere seems to be getting harder,
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, and I think a lot of that's just because like we know we can do so much online.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, sometimes there's not a whole lot of reason to get up and like go somewhere to like meet and talk about something because you can call them, you can FaceTime them, or you can like text them. But there is something again like unique about sitting across the table from somebody and really like getting all of those cues. Because even on FaceTime, it's like you might see their face.
Yeah.
You can kind of see their expressions. Like video quality is real good, but it's like the hands, the shoulders, there's just the vibe of the room. It's like you don't get everything. You start missing out on people. And I wonder what
Yeah.
effect that's having just on community and the concept we have of it, in general.
Yeah, and I mean even like and then like I was saying, as far as like your relationship with those people changes, like like there's a whole different like list of conversations you're gonna have over a mic,
Right.
on a game or
I know some of them.
oh yeah, and then just like over a call or like
Right.
FaceTime than you are gonna have in person, which kind of keeps you from having those like
Yeah.
really meaningful conversations about like scripture and
Yeah.
about like what people want out of their lives, and like you can't really get down into the
Yeah.
thick of it over like a PUBG mic.
Yeah.
I mean, you could.
You could try, definitely. Well, because it's not only, I mean, I've hesitated to use this term for a while, but I'll use it because I think it's definitely apt. It's like you're participating in like a sporting event pretty much. And like, I mean, like online gaming now, like, I mean, they
your
stream
mind
it.
is somewhere. Yeah, your
Right,
mind is
you're
on the
focused on the
activity.
activity. It's not such a mindless activity. Like it can be like if you're really good at it and you just kind of know what you're doing. But like
Yeah.
even when you're talking, your brain can only focus again on that one thing, and that one thing is usually not Jesus. I've heard some weird stories,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's really interesting, and I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know, Gamers for Jesus or something that I'm sure I could Google it and there's probably something already,
man.
but
That'd be an interesting group.
But yeah.
I mean, I will say though that the one thing that you can do off of that, as far as games go and like
Yeah,
and, like,
evangelism
online like social interaction, is you can meet a variety of people.
Right.
You can meet somebody that you would probably never
Yeah.
connect with just out and about. So I would say, and that does kind of open up some doors.
Yeah.
But it kind of limits you too, because there's only so much you can do as far as
Right.
evangelism and as far as meaningful discussion and like a meaningful friendship goes, over purely online
Yeah.
interaction. Because I have regularly played with people that I've never met before,
Right.
but that I you join a random squad, they're good, add me to your Discord sort of thing, and you play for a couple months or something like that.
Yeah.
So it does open up those doors, but obviously.
Have you ever
because of
had
the
conversations with them, even over like Discord and stuff like that gets more personal, or is it just kind of like surface level?
There's been a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was one guy that I met that was a Mormon,
Okay.
and he was in college,
Okay.
and was kind of like moving away from it.
Was he on mission, or was he just like at
No,
university?
which was why he was moving away from it, because
Okay.
he was going to university and was kind of getting shamed for not going into mission as a Mormon,
Aw.
and so he was kind of angry at all of that. But
Right.
I was able to have some good conversations with him, but I mean, ultimately, the best I could do was kind of go. There is,
Yeah, here's some scripture, here's some random verses,
and then,
yeah.
and then kind of like ask him about churches in this area and be like, if you really like don't like that
Right.
Mormon community, I don't know these churches, but like I could suggest a community. Like I could give him cues. I could be like, if the community,
Bible-centered,
believes this,
yeah.
does this, then like,
Yeah.
as a part of like
Loves
this-
Jesus Christ, loves community,
Yeah.
loves scripture. Like he can give him the points, but it's something about, I think it is physical space again, like getting to like go visit a church with him. And
Yeah,
so he's
stuff
not
like that is
alone.
huge.
And
Yeah, yeah, it's a big difference between like being able to get out of bed and like go say, hey, I'm gonna go visit the church. Do you want to come with me? Versus,
yeah,
giving him like a list of things to work off of, and then just kind of like
right.
setting him free.
What do you think about, there's a term I came across just like kind of reading about, like faith and like the, online communities and stuff like that, like legit evangelism. So it's like, yeah, they just like put a hyphen there. So it's like, like online evangelism,
Yeah.
because there's something about, I think about Facebook and like Instagram in particular, like here in Bible Belt, Texas, we've got the Christian bubble. And like, I know my feed is full of, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but like performances of the faith, so you're actively performing your faith online and you're like sharing devos, sharing links and sharing scripture. How do you think that kind of, I don't know, maybe like changes the game of evangelism in a way?
Well, like I said, I do think it opens up new opportunities.
Yeah.
But then your potency diminishes because
Right.
you lack that physical aspect of like being able to sit one-on-one or not one-on-one, but just like physically in a group with people and
Right.
have those discussions or like share those ideas or those experiences.
Yeah.
So I do see like that can play a role, but I also see I could play, maybe a negative role. You see that in like in a lot of social media nowadays because it's based off of views.
Right.
And so if you can get a lot of Christian views on something by posting something that maybe isn't meaningful, then a lot of times, maybe it's not even a Christian running the account, but they know they can get views on something.
Right.
And they
So like
can
a
get- and they can
moralist
get
kind of thing, or?
well, they can get revenue,
Okay.
because it's social media. They can get revenue from views and then like putting an ad for some Christian product on their page.
Okay. I got you.
And they can solicit that by posting,
Yeah.
kind of
I think
mediocre almost is the only word
Right.
that comes to mind, like really not engaging as far as
got
like
you.
the,
So this like shallow faith in a way.
yeah
So it's
and
not.
so that
yeah.
I see that being able to be damaging, as far as like because then their goal is to get publicity, and so then they appear on a lot of people's feeds somehow, and then somebody is maybe not a Christian looks like, wow, this is really shallow, scrolls through all this
Right,
and just kind
right.
of like goes off and kind of ignores that
Yeah.
sort of thing in the future.
I think some of that also has to do with just like the nature of the media, where
Yeah.
it's like we,
The media kind of limits your ability to
yeah,
post
and not
something.
and not necessarily like mass media, the media, but like the media of Facebook
Yeah.
and Twitter and Instagram, where it's like people aren't going on Twitter and Instagram to watch 30-minute
engage-
videos.
to engage that
Right.
sort of
They're
thing,
going on
yeah.
there to see their feed and get a quick look at everything that's going on around it, and emphasis on the word quick. So it's like you can get like a 3 or 4 minute clip of like a Devo or just like a good word kind of thing, or just like this something that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
But it does lack a little bit of depth, and I don't think that's because they're trying to be shallow. Like I don't think anyone tries to be shallow, but it's just like you're kind of bending your content to the media, and the media is the message. And so it's like, is the media beneficial for evangelism, or is it kind of more detrimental? Like, is it necessarily creating this shallow atmosphere, or is it just kind of like another way to, again, like spread the gospel, like another avenue?
Yeah, I definitely see that. And overall, too, I would say that as far as like devotionals and like sharing like Bible verses and experiences, like that might not even, thinking it over, be that helpful online, because if people aren't getting that experience in real life, how much of that are they gonna like be involved in or like be interested online? It might be more convenient,
right?
But if they're looking for something quick online, quicker than real life,
that digital discipleship game going on, and stuff like that.
And it's really tough too, because then the role if the role isn't to reach Christians,
right?
How are you gonna like put in any like super meaningful message out there to reach non-Christians?
That was something I was struggling with, and really, still struggling with, in terms of like how we're gonna get this message out there. One of the main things being, I want the medium to change, because we'll definitely have like little highlight videos, 5-10 minutes of like when this Jesus train really starts rolling here whenever we're talking, so that people kind of like, okay, check in a little bit, but hopefully there's the spark that's lit inside of them, and realizing, okay, there's probably another hour and a half to this conversation, give or take, that they can really engage in discussion or feel like they're part of a conversation. Because even within like digital sermons, like you can live stream church and stuff like that, which is great. It's awesome. Again, it like connects people. You can share your faith. It's like a really literally quick and easy way to do that. It's like you want to be able to talk with people instead of being talked at, in a way. Like the sermons are great. Like, never kind of knock on a good sermon, but it's just like it's always kind of like got to be both and. You can never have one without the other. You can never have even just like relationships without also having that authority figure speaking into both parties and saying, here's what Scripture says, and here's what Christ did for us, and just like having a good like pastoral voice guiding all of us along. Like, so there's like benefit in the sermon, there's benefit in the discussion, and it's like it's hard to engage in both because it goes back to commitment. And it's really hard, I think, to commit in the social media culture, because again, it's all about fluidity and speed and control, being able to click on different subject matters like instantaneously. And it's a tricky platform, and I think we're still figuring it out.
As far as I'm just trying to think, as far as communicating ideology online, really the only successful thing we see right now is sort of your quips, your little
quick remarks,
one liner quote.
Memes are big. Memes are real big.
Yeah. You see your little quick things that really like say something.
Yeah.
They say something really quick in a humorous way, or in like a really passionate way. The thing that comes to mind is Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
The reason he blew up is because he has all these little clips, 1 minute clips online where he just hammers an argument home.
Yeah.
And so it's really quick.
He's very efficient.
It's really quick.
Yeah.
He's really efficient. It's really quick, and the point gets made, and then people go, I would like to learn more about this. Or if they see another one, then maybe it's a little bit longer. But then gradually they get pulled in through stuff like that, and and then he becomes a part of meme culture and all that, and then I feel like all being involved in all those things really.
That's really interesting that you bring him up, particularly because like I'm not like a super politically leaning person one way or the other, but I know he is probably one of the figures out there right now that has gotten me to listen to politics and to political discussion, because not only does he have the quips in the 1 minute, just like where he hammers home a point about whatever it is, but he also has, long form discussions with people. He's got like the Sunday special where he goes on with like an hour and talks with public figures. He's got like his daily podcast where like, he kind of rambles, kind of rants, but like also talks with people and engages with them in a way that is a little bit, I mean, it's definitely more uncensored or unadulterated because it's not, you know, super mainstream, but it's like, it's helpful because it feels real. It feels like it is a discussion rather than just someone trying to, you know, commodify a message for you.
Yeah, and I feel like regardless of where he even is on the political spectrum, I think he would have seen the same success in his platform just
because of his rhetoric, his ability to deliver.
His ability to deliver, and then the way in which that was communicated through media.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was a big success for him. And so I think on one hand we have to, you know, look at that and say what part of that is valuable and what part of that isn't, as far as that methodology of like communicating important ideas, and communicating that authenticity.
Right. Well, because there's also a certain spirit about him, and I think about a lot of figures who are popping up now, the Jordan Petersons, the Sam Harrises of the world that are like, I mean, a range of ideology and a range of opinion, but. And civil is is too basic a word to put to it, but they really do love engaging in the process of discussion, and they are extremely empathetic of each other's ideas. When they don't agree with them, they perfectly are comfortable like contesting one another on like a range of beliefs, but it's like just a willingness to have these long discussions and to duke it out, almost like Socratically in a way, where it's just like we're going to break everything back down to its most fundamental piece, and then try to work.
Peterson a lot.
Yeah,
the psychologist.
No, yeah.
It's
it's good, and so there's definitely like, you know, alternative medias. I think podcasting is a big one just because you have this discussion as
Joe
opposed
Rogan's.
to, bro, he's hilarious. Not gonna lie.
But yeah, I think as far as all those go, we can see that all of those people you mentioned are able to
communicate.
Impart.
Right.
Similar.
It's fine.
Impart meaningful ideas in like a really passionate, like straightforward manner.
Yeah.
And since they can do that, like they've taken advantage of that media to really like see a lot of growth and a lot of people exposed to those ideas in a way that I would say is a positive representation of those ideas, as opposed to the kind of like shallow, like view-centered posting that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. Because none of them are clickbaity
which we also see in politics. You know, you see those like
30 seconds of fame.
30 seconds of fame, or you see those like posts that have no appeal to anybody across the aisle. They're just like mudslinging. But they get views depending on which side of the aisle you're on, and so then, you know, you get revenue off of that.
Well, what's interesting to me is just like how effective that like kind of clickbait tactic is. Like, I mean, I don't lean any particular direction, but it's like when I see something that is radical in one direction or the other, I want to listen to it because I'm like, this is gonna be good. Like, you know, so it's like strange how like even while it is divisive, even while it is kind of like, you know, just in a way kind of like tearing the social fabric or just picking at it, you know, it's like, it's entertaining. And I don't know, that'd be a real long discussion in terms of like whether that's like helpful or hurtful overall, because it certainly engages people too. You know, whether or not it informs them thoroughly and properly, whether or not they stick around for the content afterwards, you know, besides the scandal, is kind of tricky. But that's some
but I think overall then you kind of have to look at that as far as considering what a good Christian like online presence would look like, and think, you know, what kind of person do we need to like, what kind of person do we need to be like a Christian Ben Shapiro or you know? And I think you see that a little bit. There's some good evangelists and apologists out there. Some good stuff, but
I mean,
really,
Ravi Zacharias comes to mind.
Yeah, he comes to mind. But as far as really young people go, there's kind of a gap there.
Just having the cool, like the Christian cool boy.
I mean, part of it, what I think, like, at least for Ben Shapiro, his appeal partially is just because, you know, one of the fears people have about politics is it's all the elders ruling over us, and Ben Shapiro is like
extremely young.
Ben Shapiro, Ben Shapiro is in his 30s, and so I think that also helps his message of like authenticity. Is that this guy is like growing into this like system with us.
Right,
So
right. Especially
whatever
when-
he's
yeah.
making it, I want to hear whatever he's making of it, because I'm still trying to figure out what to make of it, like myself. I
Yeah.
guess would be kind of like the mindset I would think of kind of people approaching that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like, I've thought about, and I think you touched on it a little bit, like, what if we had, like, a Christian Ben Shapiro or, like, a Christian equivalent of, like, you know, the Sam Harris's and Joe Rogan's. Like,
Effectively, yeah.
a lot of people have,
communicators.
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, we have, and it's strange that we kind of don't, even though we have, like, a lot of, I mean, really great pastors in the United States and really successful pastors and stuff like that. You've got, I think people have tried to like kind of bandwagon Jordan Peterson onto like Christianity, even though he's like openly kind of said like, no.
Yeah, but I think he does a good job of pointing to the value.
The value of Judeo-Christian belief and the influence of it, I think, more so than anything,
I think whether
is where he mainly comes
whether
from.
he believes, he believes he's a Christian or
Yeah.
not. I think what he's done has been valuable to the Christian
Right,
faith.
exactly.
Because ultimately,
He's talked about the type and the story of Christ and the value of, I mean, the struggle
his
and
Bible series.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people have just kind of like clung to. They're like, oh my gosh, he's.
Yeah.
And I think the real danger of kind of having, I mean, if we did get one, is like a Christian equivalent, is like we don't want the cult
clickbait.
becoming clickbait, but we also don't. I don't
Or
think we want
oversimplifying.
Right. You don't want, an oversimplification of the gospel, because there's just so many different beliefs, even within Christianity. There's a range of, like, I'd say acceptable opinion. I mean, that's theology in a nutshell, and that's why we have denominations, And so it's like, do we want a Christian spokesperson? Like, what would that look like? Would it have to be somebody who was just, like, completely unaffiliated with denominations? Like who could they even be, for one? But then also it's like assuming they could represent the gospel well and like in an academic fashion, similar to all these other figures. I think the temptation would be to make them, whoever they are, just a cult of personality for the foreseeable future, which is pretty much the antithesis of like the gospel and like and what we strive for.
You definitely would want multiple figures. You don't want just like the one representative.
Because we got like, I mean, we get think tanks, but those kind of have like a negative connotation to them because they lean a little crazy. Not crazy, but I mean, just they're far on either direction.
Yeah.
But
But
it's interesting. I don't know. Maybe we'll get one. Maybe somebody will pop up on the internet a couple months, couple years from now.
I see a lot of pastors using
Media,
using that medium and using those little sound bites.
Right.
But I think ultimately it's really just to hammer home a point in a sermon, and I feel like you have to have it in relation to in some way to apologetics to be effective beyond. I mean, you can be effective beyond Christianity with that,
right?
But I feel like it has to have that kind of nature of defense to it
Gotcha.
as well. Just because I think we see, agnosticism and atheism so widespread represented online.
Right. That's really interesting to me as well, because I think a lot of people have pointed to the internet as kind of, I mean, the breeding ground for like atheist and agnostic thought,
Yeah.
And in a way, I think it's definitely been an expression of it, and maybe like a revelation of what was kind of already under the surface for a lot of people, because I mean, that was the stigma for the longest time. It's like, we're not going to talk about religion, and whether or not we do, it's like, how invested are you in your religion,
Yeah.
There's all these polls about like, decreasing number of people being affiliated with any kind of organized institutional religion, at least. Some people are like personally practicing in a different way. And this is a roundabout way of saying it. It's like, it's strange how we think the internet's kind of like birthed atheism or a new militant atheism. I think it's just kind of like revealed a lot of doubts that have been inside of us for a while, and kind of validated those doubts for a bunch of people who might have grown up in the faith and kind of like left, or just like needed somewhere else to go, kind of like the land of moralism, the moral landscape, if we want to go into Sam Harris. But yeah, it's interesting, because I don't think it's caused atheism. Like the internet has not been the birthplace of doubt or atheism or skepticism. It's just kind of revealed it to us, I think, in a way.
Yeah.
And like, it's what we do with that and how we respond to it. This fact that it's like, oh wow, we do have a lot of people who do doubt and who, I mean, maybe don't struggle with the faith, they just don't like the faith. And it's like scary, but also an amazing opportunity to say there's literally hundreds of thousands of people out there who I now know I can talk to about the gospel and show them the gospel, maybe for the first time or in a way that like actually does relate to them and form those relationships, you know?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, which is why I think Jordan Peterson was helpful to Christianity regardless of his affiliation, is because he kind of went into that space.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait a minute. All of these like values and like I think he's mainly focused on the moral structure.
Right.
These things are really important. They've been important throughout history.
Yeah.
You know, all law has been derived from the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
You know, basically.
Or could be seen like through that lens, because there was other societies around.
Other
stuff
societies,
like,
but they basically had the same tenets, and so they're all kind of recognizing the same morality, which for us as Christians we would point to and say, well,
the law is written on your heart.
Yeah, exactly. But I think through that people were able to go, whoa, this like whole system that I just kind of set aside as kind of
superstition,
kind of useless rule following. This guy seems really smart,
right?
And he seems to think it's pretty important, and he makes it sound pretty important through his arguments,
right?
And I think in that way he kind of pushed people back to reconsideration or consideration, and for the first time, regardless of whether or not he was actually trying to point them to the gospel.
Right. And I think that's definitely like on my train of thought as well, is like whether or not like he's explicitly like evangelizing and proclaiming the gospel in the person of Jesus Christ.
Truth.
He certainly defends the notion of an objective truth. And I think most people in that camp that we mentioned earlier, it's like they at least have that surrounding them. It's like they know truth and they want to seek truth, which kind of goes back to like, I mean, freaking Plato and Aristotle. How are we going to get to truth? Is it like forms? Is it external? Is it internal type of thing? And I think more so than, as you were saying, like evangelizing explicitly for Christ, it's like kind of maybe bringing a certain tolerance or openness to reading scripture in a way. Because, I mean, he did his Bible series, and I would love to see how many people, I mean, even if they didn't come to Christ, just like open the Bible. Because it's like, I mean, you can be an atheist, absolutely. And if you're an atheist, you probably don't need the Bible. But if you're going to be a militant atheist and be like opposing Christianity, you probably want to know what your opponents believe, and you should owe it to yourself to be informed and to read and to at least entertain the thoughts of your opposition. It's like, I think it was...
Yeah. How many times do we get, Levitical law thrown at us? Like, people don't even know that, like, application or, like, the history.
And the context.
Yeah, context.
I mean, we don't. I mean, like, I'm working on that like a freaking something. Trying to understand it. And it's complicated, and it's strange how much we reduce it to like, Leviticus, I think it's like, 18 or 19, 20, and it's like the verse about homosexuality, and it's like it's an abomination and deserve put like stone or whatever, and it's like, read the rest of the chapter, read the rest of the book, read the other 65 books, and tell me whether or not you think that verse was the keystone of Christianity. And it's like, probably wasn't, how that's reflected again in society, how people act about, just like the topic of sex and sexuality. Like, it makes it seem like it could be, but you read the book and you're like, oh wait, this is not the message this is trying to send. And I think even I think atheists probably understand that better than those proclaiming the gospel in a lot of ways. So
and I think there's this need for approval too, from those people, from homosexual or atheist people living atheistic lifestyles, that they see something that they do called out in Scripture, even if they don't know the context, or they don't know they don't know that that's not the keystone of all 65,
66 books,
66 books, or the other 65 books beyond Leviticus, that there's that need to like then move in and go, no, like,
Right.
you guys shouldn't believe this.
Right.
'Cause there's that kind of,
Well, it'd be interesting if I mean, this is going to sound super accusative because it sounds like the real issue is like, oh, wow, like sexuality is a complex thing that we need to talk about and we need to see how, like, I mean, is it helpful? Is it hurtful to like be pursuing stuff that's like outside of, scripture, outside of like God's law? It's like
Yeah.
outside of tradition, for lack of better words. Is that helpful or hurtful? That's a discussion that needs to be had. But unfortunately, the direction of discussion is not so much that as it is, wow, your book says this.
I was reading this morning
Right.
About Chris Pratt was getting called out online because he goes to Hillsong, I guess.
Hillsong. Okay.
Yeah,
Go Chris Pratt.
and was getting called out because
Really?
his church was like known to be anti-gay, which is like, well, yeah, then it's a church, like anti-gay in regards to, I think the only things they were able to list was that the church before had said that
Yeah.
that homosexuality was immoral,
Mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't let openly homosexual people hold office in the church.
Okay.
Those are the only two things.
Yeah, and that's, I mean,
And
what you would kind of expect.
it's like, if they're gonna be,
What was the shock value of saying Chris Pratt goes to this church, now they're anti-gay? It literally is. It goes back to the clickbait and saying like, okay, this is pretty common sense if you know what the church believes and if you've read the book. But to people
Yeah.
who don't know Chris Pratt, don't know Hillsong, don't know Leviticus or like the context of anything, it's like you can shuffle the words around, do some creative
Yeah.
journalism, and it's like,
Creative
oh
journalism.
my gosh, it's
is
just
that
like,
the new fake news term?
I mean,
No, I'm just messing. I'm just messing with you.
No, it's fine.
It was a funny
That's
expression.
something. I mean, we could talk. I never quite understood because I knew that kind of got birthed from like the current administration and stuff like that.
I think it's no. I was just messing with you because
Okay.
I think at base level it's like the same connotation, but it's used differently.
Right.
Fake news is like beyond
Twisting.
As a citizen, we're not in the government, so we don't know how true like stories. Some
Right.
stories that they put out are as far as like
Okay.
investigations and stuff go.
Yeah.
So it's easy for
Them to be like,
them to be like fake news. This is a lie. Don't believe it.
Oh.
And us not know whether it is or not.
yeah,
But as far
just
as,
playing with
but
the
as-
ambiguity
but-
of it all.
Yeah. But I think the basis that it tries to work from is journalists, not communicating stories, but communicating opinions that they think people should have.
Right. Well, really, I mean, and they know how to. I mean, it goes back to money as well.
So-
Trying to
so-
commodify ideology in a way.
Yeah.
And whether that's like you're commodifying your own and saying like, oh my gosh, look at this puff piece about, this church that did all this stuff for the Humane Society down the road, or it's like, wow, look at this, stupid bunch of like hillbilly hicks that don't know anything about, current society or still stuck in the past. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I just thought it was a funny expression.
Right.
That kind
Creative
of, was kind
journalism.
of down the same path as far as like
is creative.
as far as like writers spinning things.
Oh yeah, we all do. We all do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's.
Fun tangent.
It is fun tangent. I think, man, I didn't know that because I know Chris Pratt did, what was it, at the Academy Awards or something? I don't know what awards it was.
Yeah. He
He gave that speech about, Christ, or at least about God
Yeah.
and God loves you and stuff like that. And he got some backlash for that. And I
Yeah.
was like, Chris.
No. Yeah. No, he seems to be sticking with it though, so good for him.
Yeah. No, because that was a big beef that I think, I mean, even a certain part of the church was mad at him as well because they had this perception of Hollywood faith where it was like, oh, you're going to say thanks God at the awards ceremony, but then you do these roles and you perform these things that
Yeah.
like would appear as though they're not modest, they're not pure, they're not promoting this, that, and the other thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, none of us are perfect, you know, and it's like, who are you to attribute motive to whoever or whenever? It's like, worry about yourself, but also it's like, is it a bad thing that we have? I mean, Chris Pratt's a really decent human being,
Yeah.
to say, hey, you should at least look into this, and God loves you, and that's, I think, all he really said was like,
Yeah.
God loves you and he cares
so.
for you, don't forget it. I'm like, that's a good word. Like,
Yeah.
nothing super controversial about that, I don't think.
Yeah.
But dang. But you are, we're diving into some deep stuff now, which I like. We've been going into all the online world and whatnot, but you are also in an organization called Pro-Life Aggies.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to explain a little bit of your heart, or I guess the organization's heart behind what you do, kind of your involvement, how you got there, some of your experiences, conversations you've gotten to have?
Yeah, so I wanted to join, so kind of moving out of freshman year.
Right.
The goal was start out with no involvement or like manageable involvement where I can ramp it up or down, kind of float, as he said. Ramp it up into involvement because obviously, I want to be involved. I want to contribute to organizations that I care about moving forward. So then as I kind of, adjusted to responsibility as far as academic work went, I was like able to come back and go, okay, I can add this organization.
Gotcha.
I can add this activity. I can be able to do this, do that. And so I wanted to do a political organization for a while.
Nice.
Because, you can see by my Calvin Coolidge campaign button.
Yeah, you have your own Calvin Coolidge meme page. Do you still run that?
No.
Okay, it was just
I
a
don't.
thing.
It was just a thing for a little while. But
why Coolidge though?
He's a great guy.
Great guy. What did he? I feel stupid for asking. What did he do?
So
he was president.
Well, what I like to lead off with, because it's always a curveball, is that he's often described as the president that didn't do anything.
Okay.
Which, as a a conservative, personally limited government guy,
right?
It's great because
you're
I
like,
don't really,
oh wow.
I just want the federal government doing a limited number of jobs.
Okay.
And so he came in after Harding died.
Okay.
He took over, and he often gets blamed for the Great Depression because while he was which happened under Hoover after him, but while he was president, the what is it, the bank, the
Federal Reserve. Yeah.
The Federal Reserve was messing with some money stuff.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't under his jurisdiction, but people wanted him to do stuff about it. And he said, being the guy that doesn't do anything, I don't want to set the precedent for this, controlling the Federal Reserve from the executive.
Good on him, I think.
And so ultimately, they made bad choices in the Federal Reserve.
Gotcha.
But I think I respect the fact that he was able to go and say, this isn't my responsibility. It could be, but it wouldn't be a good precedent.
Right.
And if they do,
heaven forbid somebody in the future is
if they do their job correctly,
got you,
then this problem won't happen. But I can't take this over for them.
Yeah.
Because that would set a precedent that I don't.
Do you get to as the president? Don't you get to appoint the chief of the Federal Reserve though? I think
maybe.
Or is it do they serve?
It's probably it's probably
a life position
with terms maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, because that's big. Federal Reserve scares me.
Yeah.
Because I just don't understand it.
Same.
It's I get because they look at inflation, right? They look at
just interest rates for banks,
right?
Yeah.
And they set the national loan standard, something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I took macro in high school. I think I understand supply and demand.
But so he didn't mess with it, and ultimately that led to the Great Depression. But
gotcha.
But the other thing that people sometimes throw out is the policy surrounding the reserves manipulation.
Okay.
And so I can't remember if it was during Harding's presidency, or I think it was during Harding's when Coolidge was vice president.
Gotcha.
And they kind of agreed on policy as far as economic policy goes, as far as I know. There was actually a drop in the stock market that was worse than the day that the Great Depression started. And the market recovered under
Gotcha.
Under
Under a different
that administration and under different economic policies.
Right. And then the Federal Reserve came in and they were like, meh.
Let's do it again. under Hoover.
Let's try it again.
Under Hoover, and then but beyond that, he gave citizenship to all Native Americans.
Aww.
Before that, it was only ones that had citizenship were married in to citizenship or had served in the military. And so that there's a great picture of him that I've used for some memes.
Okay.
With that headdress on when he was being made an honorary chief.
Huh.
After the
That's so
legislation was passed. And then, but yeah, on economics wise, I mean, the dude had a bunch of pets.
Okay. Like
He had the
doggos?
most.
Yeah?
He had a raccoon.
What?
He had a raccoon.
More than like Teddy Roosevelt? I mean, he didn't have pets, but he did
He
like
had
all the
most
nature
pets.
stuff.
He had a bunch of dogs. He had
Okay.
some birds. His wife had a mockingbird for a while.
Bro.
He was gifted a lot, and I think because of that kind of animal-loving nature, I think he was also gifted a lot of really weird pets.
Got
from,
you. Like
foreign-
exotic pets?
Yeah.
Ooh.
He had a pygmy hippopotamus.
What?
He had 2 lion cubs gifted to him that I think he named them after like, I think to mess with them, I think he named them after like people that were working on in the
Okay.
Federal Reserve at the
Gotcha.
time. He named it after somebody that was in charge of economic policy. I can't remember who.
Wow. Calvin Coolidge, what a guy.
Yeah.
Never would
So
have guessed.
so yeah, I think he was a pretty cool guy.
Yeah.
Didn't drink much. Was a very
It's a good thing.
responsible,
Solid, bro.
responsible
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
I was messing with my brother because we were talking about the fact that so he really liked this soda called Moxie. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It
Like
gets a lot of flack. It's a
the soda?
Yeah.
I know the word moxie is like you got moxie,
Yeah,
kid. Yeah.
that came from the soda,
Oh.
actually.
Huh.
But so it's really big on the East Coast, up
Okay.
New England kind of area.
Gotcha.
But so apparently he drank that a lot, and my brother and I were joking around one day, and my brother said, why does root beer was around back then,
Yeah.
He's like, I think I finally found something bad about him. He liked the soda, and we've had it. We had it when we went on a trip to New England, and I mean by a lot of standards, it's not that good just because there's
Okay.
so much sugar and like
Right.
flavorings in sodas nowadays, and it's like this kind of odd root
Yeah.
flavor that they put in it.
Got you.
And so he's like, I think I found something bad about him. He likes this random soda that we tried and we didn't like.
Yeah.
And I went and I looked back and I was like, wait, I think you're wrong. That
Okay.
was like one of the only sodas that didn't have drugs or alcohol in it back in the day.
Bro.
And so then,
Oh, that's right. Because they used. I mean,
Yeah,
Because
so
they used to
it was
lace it
like-
with like
so the-
cocaine or whatever.
yeah, so there were a lot of them were like medicinal.
Oh my
So they would have
god.
like alcohol.
This
in
guy
them, too.
squeaky clean.
And so then we were like, wait a minute. Because the thing about Moxie was they just kind of proposed that the root was good for just like
Health in general.
health in general.
What a.
And it wasn't like, I mean, the root's not like bad for you. It's not like
Right.
a drug or anything. And
Not
that was,
toxic
like,
or-
That was like what he drank. And like the legend goes or whatever after he was, because he was like sworn in like in his basement
Huh.
when Harding died because he was at
Okay.
home.
Got you.
He like went into town and
Yeah.
bought Moxies for everybody and they all had soda.
Wow.
But yeah,
What a responsible guy.
he's a cool guy.
Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah, he's got some great quotes.
Bro. All right. Back to Pro-Life Aggies. I'm sorry we had to go down
yeah,
that, but I was
yeah,
like
I just-
genuinely curious.
Yeah, it's going down the politics rabbit hole.
Whoop.
Let's see, where was I on Pro-Life Aggies?
Just kind of
wanted to
finding-
join a
yeah.
political organization, and that's particularly an issue that I'm passionate about
Yeah.
because I mean, yeah,
They're
so-
people.
Yeah, yeah.
Ta-da!
So got involved with them. Met my girlfriend there.
Whoop.
Whoop. Yeah.
Flirt to convert.
Flirt to convert. And yeah, I mean, it's a good organization. They're secular
Right.
and nonpartisan.
Okay.
Because it's really just about
The
advocating
one
for
issue.
for the one
Right.
issue. But
Do you have people on
Most
both
people do.
parties? Do you have some people?
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, obviously, due to like the nature of
Right.
the topic and today, like it's weighted.
Yeah. It's pretty weighted, but
And then it's weighted towards Christians
Yeah.
as well. But there's atheists in there, and
Gotcha.
definitely people on the left. I think our president, actually is
leans that way.
left-leaning.
Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is almost a good thing because we.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, oh wow.
We kind of try to keep the. Well, it's a good thing because we try to keep the kind of dialogue
Neutral,
pretty
or-
neutral,
right.
as far as like what kind of the organization puts out,
Right.
And so
You
it's
run
kind
it
of a
by
good
each
check
other.
and balance.
Yeah,
for all
got you.
Like all the conservatives that you have in
I think that's really, really helpful because I mean, like at least on the national level, it's like it is dichotomized. It's like it's a right left issue, but like I think it's just like a life death issue
Yeah,
where it's
yeah,
like,
Yeah, so, but we do an event, we did an event in the fall, Memorial of the Innocents, so we put
Okay.
up crosses.
okay,
Each cross, we put up 1,500 crosses, and each cross
Hmm.
represents two of,
the procedures or
no, two of the children lost to abortion in the U.S. every year.
okay,
Pretty sure it's every year.
2 times 1,500.
Yeah.
That's like because isn't there
Or
like
no, there's more than that. Maybe it's
Yeah.
every month.
month, week? Because I know in like
I knew
2015
it-
or
I knew
something,
it,
it was
yeah.
like
There's a lot.
300,000 procedures
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
year,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
was like, wow,
Yeah, we'll backtrack on that one. I think it's
yeah,
might be. I don't know why I said year because I think it's weekly or day.
dang, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, but then like that's a really like visual
Right, right.
visual thing, and so I helped set it up, and then I helped
Take it down.
hand out flyers in front of it for a couple hours, and
Yeah.
there were some discussions there. But you do definitely have some nasty people walk by too.
Okay,
Some comments about infanticide.
right.
You know, even by modern U.S. standards, just to like stir the pot,
right.
stuff like that. That's just kind of disgusting, like really.
Yeah, because they
degenerate
feel like you're
commentary.
gonna get triggered. I think is what it.
Yeah,
what they
but
they want
beyond
you to
that,
get
like,
upset.
Yeah, but like, who's not going to be upset whenever somebody walks by talking about like murdering a 3-year-old? You know, like
Yeah,
it's kind of gross in general.
that's
like,
yeah. It's
it's a
a
pretty low level of discussion right there.
it's a no.
Yeah.
Dang. Have you had some like memorable discussions? Some like really helpful discussions? I mean, like
I did have a conversation with one guy at that display.
Okay.
I don't remember. I don't know what his beliefs
Background
were.
was,
Yeah, I don't
okay.
know what his background was. But he was very genuine, and
very questioning.
he was very questioning. I think he recognized. I kind of presented the whole basic rhetoric behind
Right.
the pro-life stance, and kind of in doing that kind of countered a few of his. He would clarify something back. Well, wait, what
Right.
about this thing?
So he's really engaging you, thinking about it. It's not just
Yeah,
kind of like,
So I was able to kind of propose kind of a larger picture of
got you.
of
Good to go in deep.
pro-life belief.
Yeah.
And he, I'm trying to remember the exact wording he said when he left, but I was really happy with it because he kind of said, well, I don't know if I agree with you or not, but he was like, I think he said, I pray or I hope that we do the right thing,
Right.
like on this issue.
Got you.
That was his like whenever he was leaving, and so it's like,
That's
that
hope.
kind of statement. You
Yeah.
can kind of that's the kind of statement you can hold like common ground over. We both at the end of the day want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And we really both genuinely hope that we do, because this is really a really dangerous issue, because you're dealing with the life and death of
Right.
children. So
Right. It's no, and I'm like not as far into like the data side of things in terms of just like the numbers
Yeah.
and like whether like the studies that come out and the doctors, like all different like these testimonies from the medical field about what it does to the infant, like where the infant is
Yeah.
along the
And
lines
then
of
the mother,
and the
you
mother
know.
and stuff like that. But it's just like it's more of a gut feeling for me, and I know it is a gut feeling, just like kind of like having grown up like in the church, having grown up with a pretty like right leaning family where it's like we just think it's alive, and it's like it's like while it can't speak, while he or she doesn't really have a voice for him or herself, it's like, especially when you can see the form of the human being inside, like on a sonogram, it's like there's the image of God for you. And even when it's not like, when it doesn't look like a human being, it's like God is reflected in every aspect of creation. Like creation
Yeah.
sings of the Lord. And so like whether that's a clump of cells and a zygote, whether that's like a squirrel in the park or like, I mean, butterflies, it's just like, that's a weird, just kumbaya example, but it's like, yeah, but I mean, it's strange how difficult it is to kind of have the political discussion of like, okay, who gets to determine what life is? And that just
Yeah.
scares me, because it's like that's the conversation, unfortunately, we have to have, where it's like we're defining where life begins.
Yeah.
And that's a real tricky task and kind of a prideful task, because it's like to think that we understand life to that degree, to say definitively where it begins and where it is and where it isn't. I'm like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, I mean the secular kind of nonpartisan
Right.
push is just that that kind of gives way to room for the Christian argument behind it all, is that upon conception you have new DNA.
Right.
You have
The zygote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have human DNA that is not the father's or the mother's. It's a new combination.
New set.
It's a
Okay.
new set. And every biological, test you could run on that immediately would
Make it
would
independent.
would make it qualify as life.
Okay.
If you found that immediately upon conception, if you found that state on Mars, it'd be all over the news
Okay.
because it's life.
Right.
It's alive and it has its own independent identity
Right.
beyond its father and mother from that point onward. And so from that, if it's a human
Yeah.
and it's a human life, then you kind of face the argument of what reasons should you be able to end it.
Right.
And generally, I mean, you get a lot of
That's where it gets real
different
fuzzy.
you get a lot of different
Yeah.
angles from that, but generally they all revolve around
The life of somebody else.
the health and well-being
Right.
of the mother.
Okay.
And from that, you really never. The problem is that the kind of smoke and mirrors around that whole discussion, because
You start to privilege one life over the other.
and
hear-
beyond that, just the circumstances, because you deal with a lot of hypotheticals
Okay.
from the people, pro-choice
Right.
people present you with a lot of hypotheticals. And beyond just responding to them, you have to step back and go,
Why?
where is this hypothetical in real
Yeah.
life? Where do I see this play out? And so as far as late-term abortions go, you see that because that's when the health of the mother comes into play, and
Right.
do you need an abortion? But at the end of the day, it's just as safe to actually deliver the child prematurely at that stage than it is to abort.
Okay. Right.
And so then you're presented with this, if your late term abortion potentials circumstance,
Yeah.
and they present you with this case of like a mother, and then that's health is in danger. Do you need to abort? We have to step back and go, well, this is your hypothetical, but in real life,
Right. Well,
that's not even a consideration, because
Yeah.
delivering the child is actually, just as feasible a possibility, and sometimes even safer, just because of what you have to do to
Right.
do that procedure. And as far as early term, it's generally just a matter of discussing the personhood of the
Gotcha.
child.
Yeah. The baby.
And so, because at that stage you really don't have health concerns for the mother.
Right.
Those generally develop, later on. That's you have your late term health
Yeah.
concern arguments, then you have your early term
Personhood arguments.
personhood arguments.
Okay.
But I mean that just kind of goes back to
Yeah.
DNA.
It's almost like the second trimester is like a weird sweet spot, where it's like there's not a whole lot you can do with that. It seems to be and the rhetoric around it, and I know it's like a slogan, and I probably shouldn't take it literally, but the whole concept of pro-choice, it's like you want the choice to determine whether or not this person is going to live or die. And even with health concern arguments, it sounds to me it's like, okay, there's no choice in this, when it's actually there's always a choice in this, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just that you really have to own up to the fact that you are responsible not only for yourself, but for another living being, you
Yeah.
know, at whatever point you think that being is living. It's like,
Yeah.
it baffles me that we want to choose on something as big as life and death to begin with, at like
Yeah.
whatever stage. It's just like, that kind of falls into the same bubble of like assisted suicide and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's like a totally different issue, but it's like, I just don't like choosing on matters of life and death. I just like kind of prefer things to stay living, you know, because I think life is always better than death, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and then beyond those two arguments, you see like people throw rape circumstances,
Okay.
and then
Which are unfortunate. Absolutely.
yeah. The thing regarding that is that obviously like a
Fewer and further between.
a deep wrong has
Right.
been committed.
Yeah.
And
But two
to
wrongs
some
don't-
degree, there always seems to revolve some sort of anger about the belief that there's not enough punishment for that.
Okay. Justice.
Yeah. But ultimately, you know, what justice is it to do something to a child
Right.
than to find out what needs to happen to the perpetrator?
They're two different parties.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just because the child came about because of the action, because of the perpetrator,
Right.
doesn't mean that, you know, you have to respond to this act of violence with another act of violence, which would be killing the child. And then beyond that, then you get into arguments about, you know, the state of our foster care
Yeah.
and
That's,
adoption
gosh,
system.
that's another rabbit trail that just needs
And
attention somewhere.
yeah, and then beyond that, you know, through that, there's a lot of like rabbit holes you can go down. But I mean, the adoption system, you know, works, and it's there for a reason. And as far as foster care goes, and then there's also the poverty argument, and all those kind of seem to revolve around the question of, like, who are we to determine what the quality of life for someone
Right.
should be, and how are we able to know what it will be?
Yeah.
How are we able to say this child is about to be born into these certain circumstances?
Right. Well, at that point, if you're, yeah.
You know, they don't, those circumstances aren't up to, you know, X standard or Y standard
Yeah.
that I hold.
The quality of life argument cuts like absolutely no ice with me, at least because, I mean, you could make that argument for anybody who's currently in poverty,
Yeah.
like who's an adult. And it's like,
Yeah.
whether or not, like, I mean, it'd be foolish of you to say, okay, it's their fault that they're poor. It's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
But like, if you're going to make a future quality of life argument in terms of whether or not it's best that they live or die, I'm like, would you make that argument with someone who's like 18, 20 years old?
Yeah,
No,
generally
you wouldn't.
generally you can
Yeah.
draw almost all, if not all, arguments about abortion back to people that are currently living in some
Yeah.
way, because you have the clump of cells, as Ben Shapiro likes to come back to that one. He's
Okay.
like, you're a clump of cells, you know, I'm a clump of cells.
Right.
You can draw all these back to, you know, people that are out of the womb. Any
Redefining,
argument-
repositioning
any argument
yourself.
that can be made for people inside the womb can be
Yeah.
made. You have like there's like the dependency argument. Oh, well, like the mother doesn't like owe the child like access to her body, like she's autonomous. But then like, and then you could like draw a parallel and say, well, like if somebody needs a kidney,
Right.
they can't make you donate a kidney, therefore you can't. But then you have to draw it back and say, well, there's a difference in responsibility there.
Gotcha.
You know, I don't, you know, as a human being, I don't owe access, you know, to my body parts,
Yeah.
my organs,
Well,
to any individual, you know, that I'm not like responsible for their well-being.
Right. Or whether it's a part of your body or whether it, like, it's
Yeah.
within your body, but it's ultimately,
Yeah.
a different person,
Yeah.
you know, and that's,
Yeah, there's a different level of responsibility there because motherhood is a different responsibility than
Yeah.
knowing somebody that needs a kidney.
yeah.
Like you wouldn't, like if I left you, you know, if I was driving you around and I
Right.
like left you on the sidewalk, you know, somewhere you didn't know.
Be kinda
That'd be
garbage.
kind of garbage.
But, like-
I'm like not responsible for
Right.
Like if I dropped you off at your apartment and didn't walk you up to your room,
Yeah.
or like just dropped you off on campus and just kind of left you, that'd be one thing. But if I was one of your parents
Yeah, and I was like 5 years old.
and you were like 5 and I dropped you off somewhere,
Yeah, that's
that'd be horrible
neglect.
because there's a different level of responsibility there, and so you can draw that same parallel back
Yeah.
to like pretty much all dependency arguments.
Well, and it's strange for me, and I think this is getting like way above my pay grade, but it's also like having grown up specifically Lutheran and with the concept of like original sin, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like we baptize infants, and like whatever your stance on like baptism is and stuff like that, how you think it's done, it's like we believe that like you're born into sin, or that you're stained by sin, like everybody's sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And so it's like, if we're making the argument that this baby inside the womb is a person as well, and in my mind I'm like, wait, is this baby inside the womb already stained by sin? And then I'm like, oh gosh, like and at what point, like, do we have the responsibility to like bestow grace upon that baby? Like, you never have like the right to take that life, you know?
Yeah.
But like when people kind of make arguments of like innocence, like this baby hasn't done anything, sometimes that like actually, like, I'm really conflicted about that, because I know, or I believe rather, that like when I pop out, however I pop out, it's like I'm stained by sin,
Yeah.
you know, whatever you think that means. And it's just like, just like it comes back to the brokenness, and that's like really uncomfortable for me, because it's like I don't want to think, especially making these arguments about like the innocence of these babies and why you shouldn't like take this life, that they're also in this broken world already. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah, it's a weighty subject. I guess
it is
you could say.
weighty.
Yeah. But ultimately, I think because of that, yeah, it takes consideration. And so you need organizations like Pro-Life Aggies to make sure that consideration gets taken.
Has it ever, it's interesting that it kind of comes back to this, but like, I know it's primarily a political topic, and like, I definitely see it like as a moral issue as well. But like, in terms of, people talk about it in terms of the government's responsibility to protect the rights of like the unborn type
Yeah.
of thing, you know, and that terminology in of itself is kind of like counterproductive. But it's like, from my understanding of how the government works, or at least how like, you know, justice work, it's like, if you're a citizen or like a resident of the United States, then it's like the government protects you, you know. But there's also like extradition and all this stuff where it's like, if you are a prisoner, especially if you've been convicted, it's like you surrender those rights, you know. And it's like, do you have the like where the civil right at least to like to speak, to be heard, and this, that, and the other thing. Like, if you're not quote unquote born yet, you're not a naturalized citizen yet, it's like, ooh, could that be like an obstacle that you still have to hurdle through in terms of like whether or not you consider this baby worthy of protection politically?
I mean,
Yeah.
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
There's that first word there.
Right.
And I mean, you can't really bestow someone, I guess you could bestow someone's citizenship inside the womb.
Yeah. Well, that's the question though, because it's like, I don't know, like at least like formally, that's how like I understand it to be, where it's like, yeah, like your citizenship like on paper is kind of like where like those duties and responsibilities and those rights all kind of coincide. It's like the social contract and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's definitely still above my pay grade, but I'm like,
I mean, as far as that goes, I think I would say that if we as the U.S. have the responsibility to care for non-citizen migrant children, which I think
Right.
we do. I mean, if they're here
Absolutely.
and they need care, then
Yeah.
obviously, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I mean, if we have the responsibility to care for the helpless, then regardless of
right.
of
Citizen, non-citizen,
yeah,
stuff like that, the label that you put on it. That's a good word.
yeah, jurisdiction. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Regardless of jurisdiction, you know,
Yeah.
then shouldn't we?
Right. I mean, because we got animals about like pet abuse, or like laws about pet abuse and stuff like that. So it's like,
Yeah.
we definitely have, I mean, and property, like, not that like a baby is like a piece of property, but it's like, even with stuff, it's like, if you cause damage
Yeah.
to someone, there's rectification and there's justice that needs to happen, you know. And that goes back to like Leviticus as well. But it's just like, it's strange how many holes we have to jump through to protect a life when we protect like your car and like your dog
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's like, which of these is more valuable here?
Yeah.
Which of these has the potential to serve society and quite honestly liberate it, you know? I don't know. It's up there, bro.
It is.
But yeah, that's awesome. And I guess like we kind of talked about it as well, but I'd love to just kind of like hit it home one more time because we've gone on tangents. Like how is Christ kind of involved in that discussion? Like what, as Christians especially, do we have to remember when talking about it, when approaching the subject of life, approaching people who don't share our beliefs, who don't share our convictions about Scripture? How do you approach those conversations from your experience?
As far as pro-life goes?
Pro-life, yeah, just...
Okay, yeah, as far as that goes, generally I lead discussions kind of with that secular rhetoric, like
Okay.
you said, but I will always throw in the kind of clarification that I'm a Christian, and then
Right.
the additions or the changes that makes to
your personal position.
like my kind of, my
Okay.
personal position, and also justifications. I'll provide both just to kind of like cover all bases, basically.
Right.
Kind of show my motivation, but also like the motivation I think kind of propose. I think you should have this motivation secularly, regardless
Got you.
of your affiliation, but also personally, I hold this conviction because of
Right.
these reasons. So,
Dang. Yeah, that's a good one. And it's strange that because it is a political issue, it's gotta kind of be argued on secular lines formally, you know? And like the whole separation between like church and state, like that's a thing. It's you know, it serves its purpose and stuff like that, but it's like you kind of have this hope and this longing, this wish that like people all were at least on a similar page in terms of like who God is, you know, who Christ is, and like what that means for like the fact that we were once dead and we've been made alive, you know, that we have been brought to life by Christ, you know, we are resurrected with him and all that good stuff. It's like when you don't have that basis, it makes things that much harder to talk about with people, you know, in terms of things that are like life and death, you know, because the gospel is a life and death issue as well. So it's like, it's just tough.
yeah.
But man, well, anything else that you wanted to add, talk about? Stuff that we didn't get to?
Flirt to convert. No.
Bro, flirt to, do you want to talk about that?
I mean,
Flirt to
that was
convert. What does that
about-
mean for Marshall Allen? Flirt to convert.
Flirt to convert means that
You engage in missionary dating,
yes,
sort of.
not actually.
It's
It's
more,
more flirt to convert to the Lutheran chapel than flirt
Right.
to convert to Christianity.
it's more about, I don't even know, like it's really just a meme, honestly.
It's just a meme.
I think it should be a t-shirt, because like, it'd be funny.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a lot of trouble talking to.
Fellow believers about that.
Yeah, that'd be
Ah.
an interesting conversation starter if you made it a shirt, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, any way to start the conversation, though. Sometimes you got to be weird.
There you go.
But yeah, thanks so much for. Ugh, I messed that up so much. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate
Thanks
you
for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you talking through some pretty deep stuff. I mean, you're a smart guy, super smart, so wise, so faithful, and love the Lord. We've been blessed by you here at the chapel. All your secretary abilities, classic.
Word is my
Word.
passion. Microsoft Word and
Microsoft Word.
Gmail.
Oh, got you.
That's all I use.
I just use Google Docs at this point. I don't have I've like not had a Microsoft subscription in like 3 years.
I mean, I got it free from.
Oh, can you do that from A&M?
Yeah,
I should do that.
Yeah.
But
would recommend.
anyway, thanks for being here. Tradition has it that you could pray us out. You feel comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Dear God, I thank you for this wonderful Saturday. I thank you for the chance to come here and talk to Cody about some really, really important stuff and just really just kind of approach your truth and kind of analyze and talk about that. I pray that we honored you in our discussion today and that we will honor you with everything we continue to say and do. And I pray that we have a good next week as we move on with the semester, that we keep with our studies and keep juggling all our responsibilities well. pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, buddy.